Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are open. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It is Wednesday, September 21st, 2022. Let's take a moment to introduce ourselves.
Eric Chu, member.
Sue Delgado.
Mike Boucher, Chair of the Finance Committee.
Bob Ferrera.
Pete Benoit.
And before we get started, I'd like to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. Okay, on the agenda tonight, we were going to start with Dan Menard, our DPW director, but he cannot be here. So, Mr. Kelly, instead of having you go right now, why don't we have? Are you okay with having the two gentlemen behind you start?
Very much
Because
so.
you're going to stay. You're going to stay for the entire meeting anyway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Doug Pimentel, our town planner, it looks like we got two articles that you're going to be involved in.
Yes.
So I'm going to have you go first. Okay. So the articles that Doug has are Article 12 and 13 in our booklet.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
So we do have two articles coming from the planning board. One was pretty familiar from the last town meeting. It was a residential village rezoning that we were looking to do, rezone two parcels from the residential A district to the residential village. And in comparison, at last town meeting, we did place a 100-day solar moratorium for any new permitting on any large-scale solar installations. So in the meantime, during those 180 days, I've been able to prepare a solar bylaw. I think is very comprehensive, touches on all the points that would be protecting the community and the public safety and health overall. I'd be happy to touch into some details on some specific points that I included in the bylaw if the board members see fit.
So what are the impacts of this article, whether it's in favor or not?
So if it's not in favor, we don't go to town meeting with it, then essentially our solar moratorium is going to expire. We can't really double dip on that and go back to the Attorney General asking for another 180 days to extend it for a year. The opinion from town council, that's more or less what we've been told. So if that's the case, then we would go back to our current regulations and what we're utilizing for solar regulations, which hasn't really been comprehensive, hasn't really provided enough protection to the town moving forward. So I feel like us moving forward with this sets the town up the best for success moving forward. It gives a clear set guidelines for the planning board. It gives clear set guidelines for any developers coming in, what needs to be included on their site plan and their applications. And additionally, it just protects the community overall. I know one of the big concerns I've heard is the clear cutting of trees and what that looks like. I've hit on that in the bylaw itself and ensured that we would be protected as a community. I wasn't really able to put a monetary value on certain trees that would be removed. That's difficult given the current state of the economy and everything going on. But looking at it, I saw that, okay, if we have any trees or any vegetation that is larger than 12 inches in caliber or greater, if those trees do need to be removed from the site, then they need to be placed in the buffer zone. If it's not capable of those trees being placed in the buffer zone, they need to identify another area in Acushnet where those trees would be planted. So that would just kind of alleviate that concern. Additionally, looking at it, we would require a minimum of 3 acres in order to build any sort of solar field anywhere. There would need to be a 300-foot setback from any acceptable way at that point in time. Along with a 300-foot setback in the frontage, there would have to be 150 foot of a setback from the rear and side.
Question for you. I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to have you here tonight is to sit here and go through. It's great, a lot of detail that's there, but realistically, the majority of the people that are going to be voting in the town are not going to go through this piecemeal and compare it to what it would be without hand.
Yes.
So speaking for the
Yep.
board, when we were talking last week, our concern is that if people just simply don't like this, then they're gonna vote no, not realizing that if they vote no to this, that it reverts back to what was previously there. I think the most helpful that we can be without you getting into every detail for the different articles that are in it is to simply, like when you were talking about 3 acres, if we vote for this. If we don't, then it's gonna revert back to an acre, whatever it happens to be.
Okay.
The buffer zone is this. If we don't vote for this, then the buffer zone there is none, or it's reduced to this.
Yes.
I think what the voters need to know is what the difference is between this and voting yes, and what happens if we vote no, because there is no time to come back with another rendition. It's this, or we go back to the original.
Right.
I'd like to add to that, just the number in general, like how many, like, this is gonna basically limit the number of solar projects that can take place in town, correct?
Correct. I mean,
So I think that's the biggest deal right there with this, is, I don't know how many we have now in town, or what the actual total would be allowed.
Yep, so I've gotten some questions about that, if we can limit the number of megawattage that is actually allowed in Acushnet, and that's not something we can actually do. Seeing what the Attorney General has previously approved, the most recent one being Hopkinton's bylaw, and they put a lot of reservations on what they had approved with it, because you can't restrict it in any zoning district. With Massachusetts heading towards the green new energy, we can't restrict it anywhere, but us placing a 3-acre minimum on the land, us having a 300-foot frontage, 150 feet for buffer zones on either side, that really restricts the amount of land or where you're actually able to do it within town, given some of the wetland concerns that we already have, what buildable area looks like, and those pieces to it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if you could explain to the board the term frontage and what that actually means, and how, if there are no streets, etc., how does that affect the frontage?
Okay, so if there's no streets or anything along those lines, a solar company would have to come in and seek easements to cross certain property lines in order to acquire the frontage that they would actually need for that property. So an acceptable way would be a public way or private way. Paper streets are not acceptable as to be considered for frontage on any sort of property. So that would really limit what we're allowed to do. I mean, there's numerous different paper streets around Acushnet, and I am currently experiencing that with one of the solar fields right now, where they're looking to utilize paper street as an access road for their site.
I mean, I'm in favor of this article, because I personally don't wanna see solar farms all over town, everywhere I drive. I mean, so without this article, that potentially could happen.
Could happen. I mean, the
Because
regulations we currently have in place are really loose. Like it leaves little guidance for, I guess, the planning board, a lot of discretion.
Well, there's less protection for the homeowner as well, correct?
Correct, yeah, absolutely. And then part of the bylaw, I also implemented a glare assessment from the nearest residence within 500 feet of it, where the solar field's gonna be, a noise assessment that would be conducted at the quietest period and at the loudest period during construction, that would have to be submitted to the planning board as part of their application as well.
And none of that is currently in?
No.
Okay. I think, when we were talking last week, I think the important stuff, the important thing is if you could be at town meeting and kind of speak first, so that way the residents who are voting more fully understand it.
I've asked both chair of the planning board and the chair of
That's
the
right.
Conservation Commission
To speak.
not only speak, but they're gonna quarterback it.
Okay. So so that the guy, so
This-
everything that you're talking about gets communicated, I guess, through them,
Absolutely.
about the importance of,
The staff is here for their expertise.
Yeah.
But the citizens should hear
Mhm.
from the chairs of the
Right.
committee that
Yeah.
are.
Right.
Is there any
Yeah.
wildlife
Yeah.
restrictions or anything?
Yep, so I did take into consideration wildlife restrictions, and I've been doing a lot of research on that. Us being a right to farm community, there's a lot of interesting things we can do with solar fields. So there's actually crops that thrive underneath the solar panels that we can start looking into as part of ground cover. Goats and sheep are actually phenomenal for these solar fields because they take care of having to maintain any sort of vegetation. So just looking at that overall and being able to move forward with that during the permitting process, when a company approaches us and comes in and looks at, okay, we want to build a solar field, this is what we're proposing for a ground cover, okay, well, have you thought about these ideas? Would this be something your company is willing to do? What else? There was another piece. Sorry, I'm just, something's in my mind right now. And then, okay, so everything's gonna have to be fenced in on a solar field just for security purposes, but allowing a foot buffer underneath the fence, so wildlife clearing, if there is a natural priority habitat, that allows any like box turtles, things like that, foxes are able to run through and clear through the site, and then not really hold anything up on that end of things.
I think that the big thing is just being able to, again, in layman's terms, present the differences between passing this article and not passing this article, so that the township understands what they'd be giving up if they say no to it.
But I think that, to expand on that, might go through you actually. You know those mailings we got for the different questions for the ballot questions? There's a pro and a con columns. Why don't we do something like that for...
A handout for them as they come in?
Yeah, we can prepare a handout, but it's
Well, obviously not now, but for the next time, maybe spring
up
meeting.
to the moderator and the town clerk. They're the ones who run the town meetings.
But unless that goes out before the meeting, it's, then they're either gonna be reading or they're gonna be voting, so I don't know.
Hand it out when you get going to literature.
I know, but is there enough time, Bob, is what I'm saying, to fully
so.
read up on it before the meeting starts?
If it's point by point in layman's terms, in a quick recap, yeah. If it's all of these different descriptions, they won't read.
Yeah,
I think so
A
long as we get a good
one-page bullet.
explanation.
yeah,
As long as we get a good explanation on the floor in layman's terms
Yeah.
for the residents, and then they can decide, because ultimately
It's their-
their
yeah, their
vote.
decision.
It's their decision, you
Mhm.
know?
it's just making sure
We're-
that we
I
know
mean,
what we're voting on.
As a finance committee, we'll make a recommendation based on what we feel is best for the town, but ultimately, it's up to the residents to decide, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions about the Article 12?
No.
All right, let's go on to Article 13.
Okay, so we have the rezoning of Bradford Street. So this is fairly similar to what we had presented at Springtown meeting. I think one of the big holdups was that it said 10 to 13 potential buildable lots. Realistically, that's not what's happening.
Right, it wasn't a specific number, right?
No, it's 3 houses.
Yeah.
It's 3 houses that will be built. We're going forward with 2 lots. If the other 534 lot is to be developed, they would have to go through the complete definitive subdivision process. There are numerous hoops they have to jump through once they do go through a definitive subdivision process. And along with that, there would have to be a roadway constructed. The impacts that has on the neighborhood would have to be analyzed at that time. However, adding 3 houses isn't going to have a significant impact on that neighborhood as is right now. Overall, the creation of the residential village district, the purpose of that was to have homes with water and sewer connection points. Bradford Street has water and sewer connection points, so this is just rectifying the issues that we currently have within our zoning right now. And I mean, there are some alternatives here. Not anything I would like to see moving forward. I've just been speaking with some of the developers out there and what that looks like. They do have 40B plans prepared already to move forward with if they aren't able to have this completed. And if that isn't processed, then the parcel is a contaminated piece of land at 484, I believe, and 482. So in that being a contaminated parcel, if they so choose to abandon the town, abandon that piece of land, there's certain procedures that looks like. But if they abandon it, the town would have to retain ownership of it. That would open up the town to be taking fees on from EPA and DEP.
When you said about this opening up for 40B housing, you're referring to like affordable single-family homes?
Not necessarily single-family homes, because the plan that I looked at was 40 to 60 units, and this isn't a large piece of property, so it would be 3+ stories. If 40B process, we have no say in it as a town. That goes to the state housing agencies. They kind of tell us what it's going to look like as long as there is an affordable aspect to it. And realistically, there's only 20 to 25% of the units that have to be affordable units. Other than that, the remaining 75% of the units do not have to be affordable.
So if this passes, this opens up that window for that kind of project to take place?
No, if this passes, it's gonna be 3 houses.
Oh, it's just
If
gonna
it
limit,
doesn't
okay.
pass.
But if it doesn't pass, then that
Okay, I got
allows
you.
them to bypass zoning
Okay.
that's currently there, and then they can go to the state
I
and
thought
say,
I thought that was gonna open
No,
that
no.
up in addition to the three.
this is,
Okay, I
this
got
is
you.
to prevent that from occurring.
Okay. That's an important
This-
fact. That's-
I just want to
Houses
maintain the
of
same
40.
character of the neighborhood already. Like, the homes that are being built are beautiful. There's already 3 across the street from where it's going to be rezoned. It's continuing with what the residential village is experiencing right now and what the overall feel is for that part of town.
All right, that clarifies that one.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty simple.
And I'd say
The
it
last
again,
sentence
the
was all we
layman's
needed.
terms, when you said opens it up to 40, was it 40D?
40B.
40B.
40B, I was lost when you said that. I gathered it from the conversation. But if you say it simply what we did, if we pass this, it's 3 houses. If we don't pass it, it could be up to 40 units.
I get a little cautious of that because I really don't like backing people into a corner and making them choose between 2 things. I'll lay out the options. It's their choice at the end of the day. And realistically, I see us having 3 options in this scenario.
Right. My point, though, was just the layman's terms part of it.
Absolutely.
40B, okay, what's that? Most people are gonna say.
I mean, if
For
there's
you, it's
affordable,
everyday speed.
yeah, I mean, affordable housing, I think there's a misconception about affordable housing. I qualify for affordable housing. It's 80% of the median income. Your police officers qualify for affordable housing. So it's not the end of the world when we're talking about 40B.
Yeah. I'm
it's
not
just-
talking negative, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, I'm just
40
stating
units
from-
is a big difference than 3 houses.
Absolutely, and we will be looking eventually, hopefully, at some future development and we have to hit our subsidized housing inventory stock
Yeah,
at some
MBTA.
point. We're at 2.3% right now, and the state has a 10% minimum that they're looking at for each community hitting, so we'll have to explore that at some point.
Mr. Chairman, the real important issue on 40B is it takes all local decision-making away. And it's decided by the state and the engineers of the applicant. So the state can come in and
Control everything.
Yeah.
not only control everything, but
Dictate.
tell you what would be appropriate in your neighborhoods.
Yeah, no.
So it's not the idea of the affordable housing, it's the idea of the town has no say what happens to it at
Exactly.
that point.
That's-
That's the important part that has to
Yep.
get out.
But we're at a point where we have to eventually meet this state requirement.
I think with the MBTA station arriving, so that once MBTA station arrives in fall of 2023, that qualifies us as an MBTA adjacent community. So essentially, we're going to have to rezone for 10% of our overall housing stock. And right now, the last figures I looked at was between 4,000 and 4,500 units. So if we're doing the math, that's about 450 units we're going to have to rezone for. That's 15 units per acre. And it just has to be zoned for it. They don't have to be built. So I just want to leave that out there. Obviously, thinking about where it makes the most sense in town, we just have to get community feedback on that and where we'd like to see that move forward.
It's an issue of geography, not the viability of development.
Mhm.
So as long as you have the geography available, doesn't mean that it all can be or has to be developed.
Understood. Awesome.
Anybody have any more questions for Doug while he's here on this article?
Just one question, but I'm sure it's because we're getting the drafts. Will this be in color so that people will be able to understand the difference?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I didn't hit the color switch on the copy.
It's a draft, I don't care, but I'm just,
Yeah.
when you're sitting there voting, they're gonna be, I have no idea what this means.
I'm struggling with it for trying to find out.
Well, a
Yeah.
lot of times they would do an overhead presentation. with-
We were gonna be
Yeah.
looking for that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Color ain't gonna help if it's the size of an amp, so, just saying.
Or if you need readers like me.
Or people wearing sunglasses.
Yep.
I found my glasses, okay, so that'll never happen again.
And Doug, thanks for coming in tonight.
Yes,
and
thank
giving
you so
us
much.
A nice detailed presentation,
Yeah,
it's very
thank
helpful.
you.
And if we're not gonna vote on anything tonight, if we have any questions between now and next week, you know, any of us will reach out to you if we have any questions, but thanks for coming in, appreciate it.
Absolutely, no, appreciate it,
Thank
thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're gonna have Mr. Chad Leclerc, correct? Oh.
No.
Oh, I thought it was Chad, okay. So,
Are you?
Kathy,
I was here to view Article 26, but,
It's renumbered, Article 14, the stormwater,
yeah.
and you're waiting for Mr. Hannon, right?
Yeah.
yeah, so Kathy, you said he was gonna be here around 7:15?
7:15, yeah.
Alright, so maybe he's running a little late. And I know you said Chad's not gonna get here until about 8 o'clock. So,
You want to fill in?
Mr. Kelly, you wanna give us a discussion about the ice and snow and recruitment?
All right. As you said, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Menard and Ms. Silva can't be here tonight, and we've had a couple discussions concerning the snow and ice removal, the fact that we have to compete in the marketplace for private snowplow operators. And the state's gone up about $30 on their rate. So we're going to have to go up on our rate to be competitive. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up. That's approximately 25 to 30% increase. We're talking about a couple options. One is, last year we were $10 above the state rate. This year we're talking about this potentially having a rate close to the state's, but also having a bonus for the private contractors at the end of the year, that if they're here for all storms, and that they can then have the bonus instead of having that $10 above the state rate.
What's the bonus?
That we're still in discussion about. Cognizant of the fact we had only 4 major storms last year. But it's just to keep us in the marketplace. But this committee should know that, 25 to 30% on the snow and ice budget. Yes, we can go in deficit, we're allowed to spend in deficit on that, and then we have to come back to the town in the spring town meeting and fund it.
Refresh my memory, how much we spent last year? Well,
I didn't grab it.
oh, okay, don't worry about it.
I will get back to you on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Unless you want me to run up and get my budget book from last.
I have it.
I think for years, we only allowed 25,000.
Yeah.
For years, they only allowed.
Well, you have to budget low in this account.
Well, that was a low, real low.
Because you are not allowed to
Quad back.
decrease it from the previous year. And so if you have a good year, as far as I'm concerned, and very few storms, I know people who ski would argue with me, but if we are then able to keep the price down, that would be great. But if we budget
Low.
realistically, we would end up over budgeting in a lot of cases in the last 5 years, like you said.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's 56, isn't it?
Yeah, everyone said, I thought it was like
It used to be
138 or
100.
something like
It was
that.
100 for years, and I think we increased it.
And then we bumped it up.
We bumped it up, but it's like what we actually spend is
I
very.
think it was 150.
It's not nice.
The second issue that we want to bring forward is we're losing DPW staff to retirements, to career-ending injuries, and to folks being recruited away from us. And we cannot compete with Eversource. We had someone who left to go to work for Eversource, double the pay rate. So it's not something we can recruit. Right now, we are looking to, in our negotiations with the DPW, Mass Council on Labor, is to change that somewhat. We are also looking to recruit people in such a way that we mandate that they get licenses in a short period of time, where they'll come in, and this is for budgetary planning reasons. If they come in as a laborer without a CDL, they've got 6 months to get the CDL, but then they'd go up to be a truck driver. If people get, especially in water, if they get the distribution licenses, they're going to be jumping up. We're going to be looking for everybody who we recruit to be getting those licenses, and we're going to have to not only budget for the increase of salary when they get the licenses, we're going to have to budget for the training. We're going to have to grow our own folks, so to speak, because we can't recruit. And that's the same among a lot of towns. Private sector right now is paying considerably more than the public sector in the public works area, as far as truck drivers, heavy equipment operators with hoisting licenses. So it's something we have to look at and be cognizant of. And when we're budgeting and when we're coming to you to look at the budgets, I wanted to give you a heads up on that. The issue is not just to Acushnet or this area, it's all over the state. A terrible thing to say, but if a recession happened, it might be better for our recruitment because people would be losing their private sector job and looking for public sector jobs.
We're probably getting close to that point.
Any questions about that?
Nope.
You've also got a experienced workforce at the DPW. And so we need some new blood, strong arms. That type of
Bernard
thing.
does a great job
Mhm.
with, all the projects that he does in-house, and so he does a very good job.
Well, now he needs the folks to actually perform.
Exactly. All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly.
All right.
Chad is here.
We just need.
You're up.
I'm up?
All right, so we have Chad there, our Community Preservation Committee Chair. He's gonna talk about.
We have a list of what we approved.
CPC articles.
There's a few.
There's the questions. The article, well, it's,
Do you have specific questions? You want to run down what we approved, or?
well, we can see which ones that the committee approved.
When we started off with some housekeeping, trying to get some of the appropriate money moved around. Mr. Kelly helped us out with that. We had some, had some recommendations, what things that we needed to do, things that we needed to get approved. So I know he'd be better to speak on any of that if you
I
have any
actually did
questions
have
on
a
that.
question regarding this. So under town administrator, we have two separate fees of $25,000. One for community housing and one for open space, and it's to draft and update open space plan, CPC plan, master plan. Could that all be consolidated into one?
Yes, we have you do not have a CPC plan. Your open space plan is 20 years out of date. Your housing plan is about to go out of date. Your master plan was 2008, so it is out of date. We have got a earmark from the state budget to update the master plan for $25,000. We've got an earmark in the state budget to assist us in updating our transportation plan, which is part of the master plan in light of South Coast Rail. You've got $25,000 I'm asking for in CPC funds to assist us in the open space plan. You've got $25,000 before you for the housing plan, and $12,000 for the administrative issues, which includes surveying the public. We also have 40 hours of assistance from Sept, which will be used to help us in this. So that would total $112,000. And the nice thing about redoing the master plan is each one of those other plans is an integral part of the master plan. So the master plan is more an umbrella over all of those. So we could do them all at the same time.
Are there any grants out there that are available to cover any of these costs?
Well, that's what when I say an earmark,
Okay.
that we worked with the delegation to, an earmark is in effect a state grant that is given to a particular community for a particular reason because your legislator has influence. So in effect, it's $50,000 of state money and $62,000 of CPC money and 40 hours of Serpid, and we figure that should bring us, if not across the finish line, very close. And then we'll also be using staff time.
The other question I had on one of these has to do with the Buzzards Bay Coalition for the land purchase of $85,000. Now, I watched the last selectmen's meeting, and the gentleman that was representing the Buzzards Bay Coalition was giving the presentation and the speech why they wanted to purchase, why they want us to purchase this land. And the more I listened to it, it just seemed like by us purchasing this, it's going to benefit the town of Mattapoisett more than it's going to benefit our town of Acushnet. And we're not even going to have access to that portion of land. And then the other thing is there was a contingency that I think two other landowners haven't agreed to sell the land yet. So if that doesn't happen, then nothing else is going to happen. So I have some concerns with this one for sure.
Yeah, there may have been questions that were asked, like you said, at the selectmen meeting and so forth, that maybe we didn't, that we didn't get to. Because, yeah, I mean, it was our understanding that it was all, that we would have an access point and that it was
Right.
all already gonna be taken care of.
Yeah,
so.
and that wasn't, and then, as more questions I think were asked during the meeting, it just didn't look like it was gonna benefit our town right now, directly, and, to spend $85,000 on something like that, when we're not gonna get a benefit from it, I don't
It's
think
not
that's-
fair to
I don't
ask
think
our
it's-
taxpayers.
No, I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers, so.
And doesn't that contingent on the other two communities pitching in? and
I'm
doing
pretty,
it also?
from what I got out of it, it sounded like
It needs to
it
be
was
all-
all gonna be one. That's why they needed us too, because they were gonna do they were all connecting. So I know those small pieces in like one larger area, and then we asked about it. I could have sworn he said there was be an access point for us, so. But, I mean, obviously if that's not true, or if they don't have all four, then.
So if we don't go through with it, the other two.
The other
decide to
two
go-
can, Mattapoisett could decide to go through with it. However, it would not preserve the
Cushion side.
Acushnet side, which includes the Tinkham Brook.
Which is what they're trying to protect.
Well, they're trying to protect the whole watershed. They're also looking for money from Marion, I believe, and Rochester.
I think so.
Yeah, and I'm not sure Marion's on board with it either.
Trying to remember, what were the breakdowns by town? Trying to remember from last week that it seemed to be in my mind that Acushnet was bearing the largest portion.
Yeah, it was like 80 some odd acres.
Right, so-
77
Yeah,
acres.
77.
Oh, I think Mattapoisett, it's over 200 acres that they're looking to purchase. Now, the representative for Buzzard Bay Coalition will be here at your next meeting. And I think those
Okay.
questions are appropriate for him because I know in the past that they've been active in other areas and how they join the parcels and fund it is their expertise and their business.
Yeah, because we'll be taking votes on these articles next week.
Yeah, well, he'll be here next week, right? So,
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Chad?
Chad, you want to talk about the Pope Park?
I was actually, that was gonna be
Yeah.
my question, is what kind of repairs are gonna be done at Pope Park?
Well, previously, we were approved for resurfacing the basketball court that we have. So what part of that is looking into, or having it lined, because obviously once it's repaved, we need lines for it and painted. It's also for new rims and backboards. I did mention to the school as well, if we do that, the ones that are there, we could maybe donate to the school, because they're gonna be redoing their court as part of the CPC also, one of their plans. So we looked into that as well. One of the biggest ones, unfortunately, it's pretty expensive, but is replacing like garbage barrels throughout the park. Looking to get, they're metal, they lock, they have a dome on the top, because one of our biggest issues now is they have no covers, so stuff, when they get filled, they fly around, get rain inside, so they're very hard to dump. We did look into, one of the suggestions from one of the board members was to check with the DPW about their barrels. They said that in order to get barrels, they have to order 200 at a time. So, and we won't be able to really put bags in those, which would be a little difficult because we have dumpsters to dump them in. So I looked at all different kinds of barrels, different sizes, and they're pretty expensive. So that's a good chunk of this as well. So, those are the two main items. And then we do have some little repairs around there, some of the buildings and stairways and stuff like that.
Is there one or two basketball courts at the school?
There's one.
There's one, and there's only one at Pope Park, right?
Yeah, I would do, I mean, that's, right now, because I have the money approved for it, I was looking at redoing that one, but in the meantime, I am gonna look into where we have land and how much it would cost to put a few courts maybe behind Champions Field so that we have 2 or 3. I've had a suggestion on naming them after Mr. Martin from the school, because he was into basketball. I'd love to be able to do that, so just a couple thoughts. I just don't want to disturb the neighbors that are behind Champions Field either, so it's just a matter of if we can find the right location. But right now, I'm going to focus on the one, and we may just do it, and then if we can expand and have a couple courts somewhere else, then
Yeah.
you know.
The reason I asked that was, so you're gonna be resurfacing the basketball court at the Pope Park.
Yep.
So are they gonna basically be doing the same thing over at the school? The
They're
same-
actually, that court is old, it hasn't been touched in a long time. They're going to apparently get like some, or part of what they're resurfacing it with is gonna be like a different material than just regular tar.
Cause I was gonna say, there's a big cost difference between the two.
Well,
I know
they're
do
doing,
bleachers too.
they're doing the indoor court, they're getting bleachers, they're also doing the tennis courts. There was also a suggestion, they have 3 tennis courts there, maybe making
Okay,
one a
so it's all
pickleball
that-
court.
it's all that
So that's my next question, you gonna put a pickleball down?
Yeah, well, that's what, somebody brought it up because it's popular, so they have 3, I mean, at the school, if they do 1, we could look into it at the park too. I mean, just like I said, it's a matter of me looking up the parcel of land that we have and what we can use and what we can't.
Was there anything in the Pope Park project that was safety related? For some reason, I seem to think that there was some type of bleachers that were a
I
safety
think that's at
concern.
the school, right?
It's at the school.
It was only at the
Yeah.
school?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and that is part of the school repairs. They're replacing the ones at Ford right now, and then hopefully down the road do the ones at the elementary, make them bigger too, more capacity and so forth.
We're also looking, once we've finished the original fiber optics installation, and to make sure we have all the security.
Security upgrades in the cameras and stuff.
Not discussing exactly what we're gonna do, but to increase security all around and make sure we don't have any problems, and that it's all interconnected, and we'll go to, in real time, to the police station.
Yeah, that would help. I mean, and I spoke with somebody about that too. That would help where, you know, if we do put courts somewhere, that we can, you know, keep an eye on that too.
Very good.
On the school's request, as Chad said, the bleachers are bleachers that were secondhand from the sheriff's office. There's issues with people getting injured because of the metal coming loose and sticking out and, in effect, pinching or stabbing people. The
Yeah,
Chad
I
can
think these
talk
will fold
about.
up and everything too, so, and like I said, I know there'll be a bigger capacity, which is good, because I know a lot of the complaints that we get from the school, there's a lot of people hanging out in the hallways in between games. Well, part of that is because they have no place to sit. So if we have bleachers that they can sit on, they can wait in the, you know, gym between games as opposed to being in the hallways. So I know that's a big thing.
And you can talk about the indoor surfaces.
Well, yeah, my understanding too is they might be doing both schools, not with this funding, but they're gonna try to redo Ford, like right down, sand it all down and redo it. I know elementary school was my biggest complaint, because it's a hazard when we play basketball. I can only imagine what it's like with gym. It's just, they slide all over the place, so.
But they plan on keeping the wood floor?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing COVID, the floor was pretty bad. when we
Yeah,
were doing
yeah,
testing.
these kids slide all over. I mean, the refs didn't even call travels because it's not worth it. The kids can't stop, so. But I know Ford's just older, it hasn't been done in a while, so.
I'm assuming they're gonna use the same asphalt company for both outdoor projects with the resurfacing of the basketball courts, or?
I'm not sure, only because I'm not sure if the material that they're looking to use for the basketball court, if they're gonna do that in the tennis courts or not, or if they're gonna, because it may be more money, so maybe they're looking to do that with basketball and not tennis. I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
And I'm sure Desi will have something to say about school athletic facilities. Whereas we do not have to worry about that at Boat Park.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Chad while he's here regarding any CPC information? We're all good? All right, Chad, thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Appreciate it.
time.
We're not gonna vote on anything tonight. If we have any questions between now and next week, we'll reach out.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Awesome, thank you, I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I pulled my file and the community preservation balances, 15,083 for reserve for open space, 66,918 reserve for historic preservation, 65,513 reserved for community housing, and for the undesignated fund balance, 569,670 for a total of 760,184. And as the chairman was discussing earlier, once you spend the money, you get approximately 40% back from the state, and that as long as it's eligible costs.
Yeah, I went out to mass.gov today and I did a little research on CPC funding and what we as a town, what kind of rate we get reimbursed at. And as of FY '22, it's 43.84% is the rate we get reimbursed at. And that's based on what we spend. So if we were to spend this total of $333,000, we'd get reimbursed 43% of that from the state.
You said it's qualified expenditures. All of these that we've itemized out are qualified expenditures then?
As far as I'm concerned, but
Okay.
you know, when you file for this with the state, they go through it with a fine-tooth comb, as you know, and they'll be asking for us to justify, and I'd never guarantee it, but I'd say that it's most likely.
Okay, so we are just waiting on our conservation agent.
While we wait, are there any questions on any of the other articles that have come up during the week?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions with regards to, I mean, the one that I wanted some clarification on was Article 2. And I know that's changed a little bit since the last week's draft. So it's a little different this
There
week.
was one thing taken out, and I changed the format to make it a little more understandable.
It looks a little cleaner, yeah.
And the 70,000 reduction in the water was under strong recommendations from DOR.
Yeah, so my question with regards to this article was to make sure it doesn't potentially negatively impact, water budget, and the school roof project.
And, well, the water, they felt was inflated because of the stay-at-home period of COVID.
Right,
And when you do the consumption estimates, you're taking a multi-year view of what went on in the past for your estimate now. And they, because of that, I think they're doing it in a number of communities where they asked if we went with straight figures and didn't consider the anomaly of the COVID era. And we told them that was correct, and they suggested this reduction. And they worked us through the figures.
Mhm.
And we verified it with Kathy Silva and Dan Menard, working with Todd and Nick on it. So I'm very confident in the figures.
Yeah, so this article is essentially is cleaning up
It's a
some
housekeeping.
past
Yeah.
accounting errors and omissions that took place over
And,
time.
and if we weren't doing this, we'd have to go to the town meeting in the spring to rectify a couple issues like contractual obligations, that type of thing.
So going forward, the finance department will have some measures in place for basically oversight, to make sure everything is being done the way it's set out to be, right? Or it's intended.
Yes, and we're also going to be looking at simplifying some of the procedures and processes to be similar to what other towns do. For example, just on the health insurance, they went from, I think it was 5 or 6 funds to 1 fund for accounting purposes.
Well, it just simplifies everything, right?
Well, we had in our chart of accounts, we had 243 funds, when most towns are supposed to have 25 to 40.
Yeah, so that's all gonna get cleaned up and consolidated and.
Yep.
Well, kudos to, the people we have right now, Todd, Marilyn, yourself, helping clean things up.
Nick and Carla.
Nick and Carla, yes. Everybody.
The finance team you've got is a superior team right now. And as I said, part of the philosophy is we're making sure you grow your own.
Well, I
Yeah,
think,
when,
exactly, I think we need to have like a
when
certain
the-
level of continuity.
When the gray hairs like me are gone,
Well,
you have
we need you to
young
mentor,
folks.
we need you to mentor some folks, right?
Well, you're gonna have a bunch of young folks in place that really know what they're doing.
That's good.
Sorry, just a quick question. The $74,000 for the debt service, that's 1 year's worth of interest on the,
On the short-term
Yeah.
interest.
what rate is that?
Pardon?
What rate is, what,
It's a ban, it's a short-term borrowing.
I mean, what's the interest rate though? What, like, if we're calculating at $74,000, how much
Of 2 million and change.
okay.
I can walk upstairs and get it for you
No, I'm just, I
after
mean,
the
obviously,
meeting.
depends if you're listening to the Treasury Secretary or not. I mean, what's gonna happen with interest rates? I'm just-
Well, this is already locked in,
Okay, so-
and we're going out to bid. We're going out to bond, sorry.
yeah,
Uh,
and so it'll convert, so we'll
Yeah.
have to pay whatever the going rate is at that time.
Yeah.
And the rate's increasing.
And it's 3+ right now.
Yeah, at like 2.5 million, that's slightly under 3%, 2.9%, if we have a $2.5 million.
Yeah, but we
principal.
won't get the same rate
Yeah.
with that we got with the bands, with the bonds.
Yeah, it's gonna be higher.
Yep.
I mean, it's a municipal bond, so it's not going rate, it's gonna be slightly less because it's not subject to tax.
Yeah, but it's, well, and it's when we go out, because you can't convert a band to a bond until the project is done.
Yeah.
I will tell you that we will not be double counting the school choice assessment again. And the money and the reason for it on the article for the DPW contract, the DPW contract is not yet finalized, but I put an estimate there and an exclamation as a placeholder. I would not want to discuss it publicly over the air because we're still negotiating, but it's going to be pretty close to that.
Is the, I'm assuming the golf department's gonna have some representation at the town meeting and be able to speak to the
I
article?
met with the subcommittee of the golf committee, which they call the Greens Committee. But I met with them the other day. We discussed that. We discussed that it would be very advisable for the chair of the golf committee to stand up and explain what the expenditures and the plans are for these capital expenditures. A lot of it has to do with the irrigation system. And you're, I think within 5 years, 5.5, of the bonds expiring. So at that point, you're going to have to make decisions on how you,
A long-term plan, essentially.
a long-term plan on the golf course, but also if the revenue stays where it is on, and it's fairly restrictive what you could probably do with revenue depending on, and I would have to do research on whether the restrictions were when you originally purchased the golf course. But part of it is to preserve some of the land around the golf course. If you have future recreational needs, you could have part of the land and part of the funding could be used for that. And it would be nice to see some kind of youth program, whether it's run in association with Chad and his recreation efforts and the golf course, so that you could have young folks
They can
learn
put
the
tennis
game.
courts, pickleball courts,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and a clubhouse.
but you could also have young folks,
Yeah.
and I'm talking elementary school age, learn the game. I've seen it done in other municipal courses.
Well, they
That's-
have a
Pardon?
youth program out there.
Yeah, but I'm talking through
Through the school itself.
the rec department or through the, where you see that it actually is not a tuition cost basis for the kids participating, and they just have a introduction to the game and the whole facility. And that, if you still have the revenue you have from the course, that could be a possibility to have the, because you've already got a professional there. And I've seen in another place, the pro line, a whole bunch of 6, 7, 8-year-olds up on the practice tees and have them learn what it's like to swing a club.
I think, well, that, and maybe potentially like a small clubhouse where you can have some food and drink, watch a game after you play, 18 holes.
That would be an advantage.
Yeah.
And like you said, pickleball or tennis court, and you're going to have to do something about the parking up there. It's very inadequate and people line the street, so you probably need a overflow parking lot.
I haven't golfed in a couple of years. Is it still a gravel parking lot?
Oh, no, did they pave it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they,
Also, it's
they paved
completely paved now?
last year? Did last year?
It's paved, but there's still people that are
Yeah.
parking beyond the pavement.
The parking lot, they paved it last year, it was last year, or the year before.
And your cart paths need to be redone, and you also gotta look at whether the irrigation system with the well, that you've got one good well and one well that the water will go below the limit of the well. So you've gotta look at that.
Mr. Kelly, I did have a question regarding Article 7, which is gonna cover the cost of the technology capital improvements, the $80,000. So the funds where this is coming from are from unused funds from
Past
from
articles.
past articles. So these funds are no longer gonna be needed by any of these departments?
We have talked to every department head, and we have asked each department head if that is the case, and every one of them, the finance department did a survey of every one of them to make sure. I mean, if you look at some of them, they're totally out of date.
Right.
As you folks were joking about
The
the
CD-ROMs.
CD-ROMs.
Yeah. Well, the animal control of the new vehicle, so there was a balance of unused funds in there for $10,878.
And we talked to Becky, and
Yeah, she
said-
she's also.
yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't go after the money without giving the department head the
Oh, right.
courtesy. Having been a department head elsewhere in my younger life, I wouldn't
Yeah,
want
you don't want to
some,
assume that they don't need it.
I wouldn't want someone to pick my pocket without at least saying please.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Well, I'd hope thank you afterwards.
Any question?
No. Sorry, no. It took me a second to process everything.
I do like how in the warrant that there's an explanation about what each article is, and we've never really had that before.
And I'm
So I-
expanding it, as you can see, from
Yeah,
draft
so I
to
think that's,
draft.
I think that's gonna be great for the residents, cause it kind of puts it into context and simplifies it. You know, so you kind of understand it better than just the way it's, you know, you have to put everything, you know, the way it has to be legally done, but sometimes it's hard to understand that way.
The finance articles I can explain. Don't ask me to explain the zoning ones.
That's why. it
I
was
just
good-
know the broad concepts.
That's why it was good to have, you know, Doug here tonight, to get a good explanation of those two articles, because I think that was important.
Yeah.
To clarify some things, because if you interpret it one way and you don't fully understand it, you know, you could be voting for something that you don't really want, you know?
Sorry, I do have one question. The Article 7, what is CWMP plan?
That's the comprehensive waste
Management
management, right?
plan.
Yep, that's
And we have $52,000
left over.
access? Okay. I mean, what was the original? 52 is a large
I
number.
think the original was like 350,000.
Okay.
That was budgeted for.
Yeah, and,
So we completed it,
yes,
and we
and
just overstated what we
we
thought.
even have it on a thumb drive. I have a copy of it, I think I gave it to Doug.
On a CD-ROM?
I was
So
gonna
Lauren-
say, on the CD-ROM.
A thumb drive,
Yeah, I mean, that article was determined what areas of town would have sewerage, correct?
and the phasing of it.
Right. I don't even remember if we ever got a full conclusion on that, right?
Oh, there is a plan.
Mhm.
There's, DPW has the plans and it shows the phasing in the areas of the town, and it's on the thumb drive.
Oh, I'd be curious.
But what if we've only done like the first phase though.
In this part of town,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm like,
So
like
when's
we're out in precinct 3, off of Middle Road, heading towards the schools. I don't know, whenever I'm doing anything around my house, I'm always hitting rocks everywhere, there's so much ledge, I don't know how they could do sewerage where we are, but, I don't know.
See the amount of ledge down here,
yeah,
South Main Street.
yeah, the ledge down,
Pepper,
They couldn't go past.
They had to
beat it.
dynamite everything.
Yeah.
But
We take a lunch twice a
at
week.
some point, you might have to, whether there's ledge or not, you might have to do it because with all the Title V changes that the state's proposing and the nitrogen issues, you're, people who are not sewered might have to be, especially since you're fairly close to a major water body in the Acushnet River and the harbor.
I don't think
No, we're way off.
Yeah, we're not.
No, but the town is.
The town is.
Yeah.
yes.
And if you're in,
Yeah.
if you're in the watershed, I know in my town, we're in the middle of the state, but the DEP still came in and said, you've got some
So
major rivers, et cetera, and you're going to have to sewer major portions of your town.
They're cleaning up the river down there now.
Yep.
They come down Lawson Avenue in the middle of the morning, but the jake breaks up.
It's, I guess at what point, does this go into the camp of, we're gonna get ourselves into trouble if we don't move forward with the rest of the plan in the not too distant future, like?
I would say your major infrastructure is something the Board of Selectmen is discussing for the use of ARPA funds, and you've got water lines that are 100 plus years
We've
old.
talked, yeah, the water lines are an issue, we've definitely
You-
talked about
Your
this.
sewer lines that you have installed are fine, but you're gonna have to have your water lines done. And when I taught an MPA program, in an MPA program, my tricky final exam question was, what is the prime necessity to having a town? The prime necessity to having a town is drinkable water. So you've got to make sure those water pipes bring you
Yeah.
drinkable water. I mean, a town near me that has spent barrels of money just was told that they couldn't drink their water, and they had the DPW giving out jugs of water that they got from, I think, Poland Springs.
No, it's a major issue. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big health
Mhm.
issue that, water is vital to life and it needs to be high quality without all kinds of contaminants in it.
But you're lucky you've got fairly good water. You don't have lead problems, you don't have a lot of problems, or even the PFAS problems that other communities have, you don't have. So you're doing very well there. You just gotta make sure that your pipes bring it to your houses.
Right.
Not in the ground.
No, that's been a major issue that we've been dealing with for a while, so. And spending the money on infrastructure, I think, is the main reason for it being there, right? Because then it has that ripple effect and helps build the economy,
That's the purpose of free cash.
Exactly. So, let's have our cake and eat it too. Let's spend it where it should be spent and fix the stuff that needs to be fixed.
Oh, yeah, the stuff that, really needed, right?
Yeah, you don't use money like that to balance your budget or for annual expenditures.
Mhm.
That's when you get yourself into a lot of trouble.
And DOR would frown on it considerably if they saw a constant use of free cash or one-time
Yeah.
funding sources to fund an operational budget.
That's a bad idea. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Does anybody have any other questions about any of the spending articles that are before us while we have Mr. Kelly here?
I'm good.
Everybody's had a chance to review stuff.
The technology capital improvements, the $80,000, what's that including? I was talking to Nick earlier, and there's a few things that he was explaining about the fiber.
You and
great
he
stuff.
talked that language.
No.
In effect, our
I won't
grant.
bring them out of the closet, don't worry.
In effect, our grant pays for stringing, buying the fiber, the
Right,
cable,
this is the,
and
what the
stringing
equipment in the
it.
buildings.
And this is the equipment in the building to connect up.
Okay.
And it's gonna be all the buildings and the superintendent's office and the 2 schools. And anything left over will go to the public safety, fire safety upgrades that we're going to need.
Mhm.
And we'll probably have to come back in a year to complete all the upgrades and the security upgrades. So first, let's get the cable in.
Mhm.
Okay, so it doesn't look like our conservation agent is showing up tonight.
Yeah, I don't have his number, I emailed him, which he didn't.
All right, so maybe Kathy, if you can reach out to him, and since the gentleman from the Buzzards Bay Coalition is gonna be here next week, maybe Pat can come next week as well, in case we have any questions, and then, you know, between now and then, I guess, you know, take a look at these 2 articles that he has, so we can just get the questions out of the way right away, because then we get a vote on everything next week. We're gonna get this done, because we're under a time frame.
I'm already writing the motions.
Okay.
I've sent it off to town council, the draft. I'll probably have the motions done by the beginning of the
You
week.
need a letter from us, the finance committee, right, to go into the, when do you need it by? Tomorrow?
Yes.
Tomorrow? Yes.
No, I'm fine with it, and I still need to talk to the Board of Selectmen about
If I have it ready for next week's meeting, is that okay, or is that too late?
electronically, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so I'll work on that this week. I'll draft a letter and I'll send it to everybody so you can take a look if you wanna
Mhm.
make any changes to it. It'll be similar to the one I did for the annual town meeting, but I'll, you know, change it up a little bit relative to what we're going through and, you know, some of the things relative to this meeting. Kind of adjust it, and I'm also gonna indicate in the letter, be more specific about what our role is as a finance committee, like what we do versus what we don't do. So there's clarification on that, and that doesn't come up during the meeting, so, or if it does come up, then I'll speak to it, but it'll be there in writing.
I would also suggest maybe a paragraph about what we've gone through with the finance department.
Yeah, I was intending to include that in this letter.
And
Yes.
how
Proactive.
some of the issues that should have been caught, that go back almost 2 decades, should have been caught by the auditor. And I don't know if I told you, we've decided to part company
Yeah,
with the
I think
present
you mentioned that
auditor.
last week, yeah.
Yeah, so,
But is
And
it fair to say that the new people in the position have taken a proactive approach about analyzing and looking at everything to make sure that what is being done is appropriate and made adjustments as
you
necessary?
you have interim folks who are, part of the direction to them from the executive offices to make sure there are procedures and processes in place, and we start to also put together financial policies for a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that I cannot find anywhere in the building.
Mhm.
You should have policies on free cash. You should have policies concerning the operation of the financial departments as well as the other departments. It shouldn't be just HR policies on harassment or, those are good, they protect the town, but there's a lot more that are needed.
Okay, so, next on the agenda would be any old business. Does anybody have any old business they want to discuss? Okay, under new business, I want to discuss something. I had a correspondence with the Old Colony Superintendent, Aaron Talansky, a few weeks back. He reached out to me, he sent me an email, and he wanted to get a sense of where we would feel or be as a town, specifically the Finance Committee, with regards to Old Colony has an interest in reconvening a committee to have a school resource officer full-time on campus there at the high school, and what the cost would be. And he gave me a little bit of a breakdown, and the initial cost, I think, was like 10.5, right? For the
Yeah.
first year, and then it would go up incrementally, maybe like $1,000 a year for the next 3 years.
And it would adjust based on our participation for their enrollment as well, right?
I believe so, I believe
Yeah.
it would.
Which is slowly working its way up.
But that would be for a full-time position. Now, I did respond back to him and I said, I think it's a valid concern, but of course we would want to know cost. I would want to have the town administrator involved, our board of selectmen. And then I also advised him to reach out to the Bristol County Sheriff's Department, because they do free audits for this type of thing. They'll go into the school and assess safety measures to see if they're up to par, or if there's any improvements that they could make. So this is in its infancy with them.
Where would the officer be coming from?
That's my next question.
It's in its infancy, and
Yeah.
we didn't even get to that point yet.
You probably would have to be a
Alternate.
sworn officer of the town where
Rochester,
they.
yeah.
Probably, yeah, the
School's
school's in
located.
Rochester, so.
Yep.
Probably have to come from the Rochester Police Department.
We currently have a full-time officer in the Acushnet Public Schools,
Mhm.
correct? So to not have one cover our students in the high school, I think is a disservice to begin with.
Why don't they have one now already? I guess that's the next question.
Not all schools have them.
Not all schools, I mean, it was never part of the budget that I can remember when I was
No.
the FinCom rep.
Didn't they get a bunch of money from the government to improve all it, with security?
To harden the building,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
But it
not,
will-
And
not
he
do
did, I think
the,
he
not
did
do
some possible,
personnel.
a grant to cover some of the cost of having an
Security.
SRO there,
That's what I thought.
but it wasn't available right now, according to him. Now, I don't know, because you're the liaison, right, to OC?
Yes.
So if all the towns don't agree on, like, a certain issue, does that not pass, or is it just a majority, like?
I believe it's the majority, but the
So-
town still has to be able to come up with the funding for their portion of it. I don't think, at least as long as I've been the liaison, we haven't had an issue where there's been,
It wasn't unanimous.
Right.
And
It's always
same
been
when I was on
unanimous.
it.
Yeah,
Same
but
when
I
I was
mean-
on it. And my recollection is it's 3 out of 5. It's 3 out of the 5 schools need to agree for something to pass. Is that consistent with your understanding? It's not unanimous.
I don't know,
I thought it was
So
3 out
just a
of 5.
majority?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case
I
as
could
well.
check with Aaron, but.
But, so let's say 3 out of 5
Agree.
want to agree, but the 2 towns don't, those 2 towns are still obligated
Yeah.
my understanding
Oh, yeah.
is,
to pay?
yeah.
For some things, regional agreements are a supermajority, depending on the contract you signed when you started the region. Or it could be just a majority. You know, for the 5 towns, some things might need 4 out of the 5 votes. But it all depends.
And it's just 1 vote per town. It does not change
Right.
based on your student population.
Correct.
And
So,
when you're looking at an SRO, you're also looking at an increase in the training budget, because you have to have an SRO go through training before they can become one. And then there's the continuing education issues. So,
I do know in other municipalities, I'm not aware of any in Massachusetts, but they have reached out and gotten veterans that were willing to volunteer their time and cover that for the school. Whether or not that's an option, I don't know, but I mean, it's certainly something that's out there. And I don't want to say my concern, but I have a daughter that's at Old Colony. But to tell our taxpayers that we're happy to protect their students in this school, but not in that school, especially where we're looking at a $10,000 bill, and yet we have underfunding sometimes for different projects that shouldn't be underfunded in the town. That's a hard pill for me to say that wouldn't deserve to get approved.
and you should look at, on that note, and I'll bolster the argument a little bit by saying you should look at how many students you have enrolled from this town
It's like 157, something like that.
and divide it into 10,500, and
Yep.
it's,
Yeah, break it down that way.
yeah. It's,
At that point, you're what, $77 a student, roughly?
Well, and, you know, Aaron's gonna reach back out to me, so we're gonna continue this conversation, and whatever new information I get, I'm gonna convey to you, and probably to Pete, because, you know, you probably attend some of the meetings, I would imagine.
why don't you convene the meeting up in their culinary
There you
place?
go.
It's a great feed.
I've attended one of the meetings there, yes. Yeah, it was a good deal. All right, so I just wanted to make our members aware of what's going on as far as that goes. So our next meeting is here next week, 7 o'clock, and next week we'll be voting on all these articles. We have to get this done next week. So are we gonna have a quorum here next week?
I can be here next week, it's the week after, I'll come on.
Okay, and as far as I know, Eric McGlynn will be here next week. So everybody here planning on being here to vote?
I'm gonna try.
I'm not
The
changing
30th
my
is a
seat
big
either.
tax deadline.
Okay.
As far as of right now, I very much plan on attending,
Okay. Yeah, because we
unless an
definitely,
emergency happens.
yeah, because we can't vote if we don't have a quorum.
Yeah, but if Eric's here, we'll have
Yeah.
a quorum.
Or if you needed to be like available
Yeah.
through Zoom,
That
and
is
you can't
always
physically
easy.
be here.
Yeah, that,
We could
Do
do
that.
that. Kathy, we could make arrangements for that, right?
With Nick.
Okay.
And
I'll let you know, Kathy, if that's gonna be necessary.
after the board meeting on Friday, I'll forward out to you folks and to Kathy any changes they might have, or
Okay.
whether they want to withdraw an article or not,
That's right, because their next meeting is this Friday, right?
at 9 o'clock.
Okay, because that's when they're gonna be voting on all these, correct? Okay. All right. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, Kathy.
Actually, the engineer for the stormwater, he couldn't be here this week, but he can attend next week, and he was gonna come in via Zoom, so.
Okay. All right, great. So we'll have hopefully the conservation agent, the gentleman from Buzzards Bay, and the engineer. So that way we can clarify any issues, you know, we're doing our due diligence, we're gonna ask as many questions as we can, to be well-versed in all of these articles. And even the ones that aren't spending articles, indirectly, they can have an impact financially on the town. So I think we should be well-versed in all of them anyway. That being said, I don't think there's any other business to cover tonight, so do we have a
Motion adjourned.
motion? Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Good night.